I don't really post online. Not on forums, not in comment sections, not even Yelp. But after what happened that night, I feel like if I don't say this somewhere, I'm going to burst. My name's Clint. Yeah, I know. It sounds like a name you'd give a ranch dog or a retired sheriff in some old Western movie, but that's what my parents gave me. I'm 39, work as a systems analyst for an insurance company in Missouri. I still wear khakis to work even though no one asked me to. That's the kind of guy I am. Predictable. Safe. Comfortable. Or at least I thought I was. Until last Saturday. My wife, Tessa, is 36. She's fire. The kind of woman people stare at when she walks into a room, then pretend they weren't. I met her in college when I was tutoring her in economics. She always said she fell for my mind, but deep down I think it was the way I made her laugh when I was nervous. That, or the fact I helped her pass microeconomics with a 92. We've been married 11 years. Not perfect years, some of them were rough, but I thought we were solid. I thought we were real. The night it all fell apart started with a pair of earrings. Tessa had been invited to this fancy charity masquerade gala hosted by one of her brand's sponsors, some new luxury candle company that markets itself like it's curing disease, not just burning wax. She said it was going to be one of those nights, which usually meant overpriced wine, tuxedos, and 100 strangers pretending to be friends. But this time, something felt different from the start. She'd gone out shopping the day before and came back with this silky crimson dress. It shimmered when she moved, like it had a heartbeat. She said she'd wear it, just for me, and winked. But the next day, when she actually put it on before the event, she barely looked me in the eye. I told her she looked stunning. She said, "You always say that." I smiled. She didn't. We got to the venue around 7:45 p.m., a remodeled art museum that smelled like wine and cement. They gave us gold-trimmed masks at the door, and I remember thinking the whole thing felt like a play I didn't belong in. Everyone was taller, shinier, louder. I stuck close to the appetizer table and tried to act like I wasn't sweating under my jacket. Tessa mingled like she was born for it. Laughing, posing, sipping, not once reaching for my hand. I told myself not to be clingy. Told myself she just needed to network. Told myself a lot of things that night. But none of that prepared me for what happened later. Around 10:20 p.m., I realized she'd been gone for a while. Said she was going to check on a friend upstairs. No big deal, right? Except, she didn't take her phone. Now, I'm not the snooping type. Never have been. But something gnawed at me. Not suspicion exactly. More like a cold curiosity. I took the elevator up to the mezzanine, where the lighting was soft and pink like the inside of a seashell. There were scattered private booths with sheer curtains, a bar with no bartender, and the faint echo of a jazz trio from below. I walked toward the farthest booth, quiet, tucked in a shadow, and stopped. Through the translucent curtain, I saw her. Tessa, sitting on a velvet bench, her dress pulled slightly to the side, talking to a man I didn't recognize. His hand rested just above her knee. I should have walked away. I should have screamed. But instead, I stared. And then she moved her leg just slightly, and I saw what was strapped beneath her dress. It wasn't anything scandalous. It was something worse. A tiny wireless microphone, taped under the fabric, barely visible unless you knew where to look. A glimmer of silver. My breath caught. That wasn't a fashion accessory. That was surveillance. And the man? He noticed me. Smiled, calm as a priest at a wedding. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just cheating. It was something else. Something bigger. Something I wasn't supposed to see. And I just stepped into the middle of it. I didn't move. Not right away. Just stood there like a man frozen in place while his house burned down behind him. The curtain between us swayed gently, almost as if it were inviting me in or warning me to stay out. Tessa hadn't seen me yet, but he had. The man sitting beside her, with that smug smile like he'd just pulled off a magic trick, raised his glass in my direction. Not a word. Just that look, cool, slow, certain. The kind of look someone gives you when they know something you don't. And that scared me more than if he'd lunged at me. I backed away. I didn't want to make a scene. I didn't want to confront her, not there, not like that. Something deep in my gut told me I didn't have the whole picture. And if I exploded without knowing what I'd seen, I'd never get the answers. I went back down the stairs, slowly, deliberately. Grabbed a flute of champagne from a tray I passed, though I didn't drink it. My hands were trembling just enough to make the bubbles stir. The rest of the gala carried on like nothing was wrong. Couples danced. Photographers snapped pictures. People air-kissed and bragged about startup investments. I sat on a bench near the coat check, thinking about that tiny microphone under her dress and how I'd spent the last decade believing she was just Tessa, my wife, my best friend, the woman who left post-it notes in my lunch and cried during It's a Wonderful Life every December. But this woman upstairs, with the secret device taped to her thigh and a stranger's hand so close it hurt to think about, it wasn't the same Tessa. Or maybe it was, and I just never looked deep enough. When she finally came back downstairs, she was glowing. That's the only word for it. Glowing. Like she'd just been told a wonderful secret. "Oh, there you are," she said casually, as if I hadn't been sitting in a silent storm for 30 minutes. "Sorry, Chloe needed to vent about something." Chloe. Right. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And it was like seeing a beautifully crafted statue, stunning, flawless, but completely hollow. I nodded. "Everything okay?" She smiled and touched my chest lightly with her fingertips. "Better now." We left the party shortly after midnight. She fell asleep in the passenger seat before we even hit the freeway. I kept glancing over at her, wondering what else I didn't know, what other truths were hiding beneath the fabric. At home, I helped her out of her heels and she kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. Then she disappeared into the bathroom to change, humming a tune I didn't recognize. I stood in the doorway of the bedroom, staring at the small red box on our nightstand. The one she always kept locked. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, the ceiling fan spinning slow and steady as questions throbbed in my skull. Who was the man? Why the microphone? What was recorded? And more importantly, who was it for? The next morning, she acted normal. Eggs, toast, even played fetch with Baxter in the yard like it was any other lazy Sunday. I pretended too, but I wasn't okay. By noon, I'd made up an excuse to go out, told her I needed to grab more allergy meds, and instead drove to my buddy Preston's house. He's a bit of a tech wizard, and the only person I trusted to keep his mouth shut. I told him I saw a hidden mic strapped under Tessa's dress. He blinked a few times and said something I'll never forget. "Dude, you sure she's not working for someone?" I laughed. At first. But the more I thought about it, the less it sounded like a joke. That night, when Tessa went to shower, I did something I hadn't done in 11 years of marriage. I searched her closet, her bags, her drawers. And that red box? It wasn't locked anymore. Inside, I found a flash drive. One that didn't belong to me. And that was the moment I knew. The woman I married. She wasn't just hiding secrets. She was part of something I wasn't supposed to survive. I don't know how long I just stood there, staring at the flash drive in my palm like it was ticking. It was small, black with a red swivel cap. No label. No markings. Just weightless and innocent looking, which made it even more terrifying. I shouldn't have found it. I was never meant to. That red box on her nightstand had been locked every year of our marriage. Tessa said it was for sentimental things, like old love letters, trinkets from college, a note her dad wrote her once. I respected that. Never asked questions. Never peeked. But now it was open. Left unlocked. Or maybe it had been for a while, and I just never bothered to check. I stood in our bedroom, the lamp casting soft shadows on the wall, and realized I was shaking. I plugged the flash drive into my laptop, my breath shallow. For a moment, nothing happened. Just a blank folder titled, or. Inside that folder were 12 video files. No names. Just timestamps. I clicked on the first one. It was grainy footage from what looked like a high-end hotel suite. A woman, Tessa, was sitting at the edge of a bed, speaking softly into the camera. Not to me. Not even to someone in the room. It felt more like a report. Client responded as expected. Pushed the line further than protocol suggested, but I maintained cover. She sounded rehearsed. Professional. Like an actress in a spy show. Her tone was measured, her posture perfect, her gaze cold and detached. I didn't watch the rest. I closed the laptop. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to wake her up and shake her. Ask what this was. Who she was talking to. What the hell was going on? But I didn't. Instead, I walked downstairs, sat on the cold kitchen floor, and stared at the dog bowl like it held the answers. The next morning, she greeted me with the same cheerful kiss and asked if I wanted waffles. I almost choked. She was standing there, humming, flipping batter, while my head was spinning with images of her speaking in coded phrases to someone I couldn't see. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I took the flash drive to Preston again. He took one look at the files and muttered, "Dude, this is surveillance work. Like legit contractor grade." "What kind of contractor?" I asked, still praying for some normal, sane explanation. He hesitated. private intel firms, off-the-book stuff. Some of these people work corporate jobs as a front. Tessa, in intelligence? It felt like someone had handed me a script from a thriller and expected me to play along. The woman I knew had anxiety attacks when the car battery died. She hated confrontation. She cried during phone commercials. Or maybe that's what she wanted me to believe. Preston offered to look deeper, but I told him to stop. I didn't want him getting pulled into whatever this was. I went home. Tessa was out getting her nails done. So I looked deeper myself. And that's when I found the other phone, taped under the false bottom of her suitcase. Turned off. Clean, factory reset. But the SIM card was still inside. I popped it into my old Android burner from college. Somehow it still worked, and booted it up. Messages. Dozens. But one stood out. It had been sent the same night as the gala. Sender, unknown ID. Message, nice work tonight. Don't let him suspect yet. You're almost in the clear. I dropped the phone. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about cheating. This wasn't about an affair. It was worse. She was using me, watching me, and whatever game she was playing, I wasn't even a player. I was the target. There's a kind of silence that doesn't just fill a room. It presses down on your chest. That's what I felt as I sat in the dark, the burner phone still glowing faintly on the coffee table in front of me. Tessa was out, probably sipping coffee or fake laughing at some boutique spa. Meanwhile, I was discovering my entire marriage might have been nothing more than a script she was hired to read. The message kept echoing in my mind. Don't let him suspect yet. Yet. Not if. Not in case. Yet. Like they expected me to figure it out eventually, but not until she'd gotten whatever she was after. I started retracing everything. Our wedding. Our first apartment. The job I got just 2 weeks before she spontaneously showed up at my office with celebratory cupcakes. The conversations she used to steer toward my work, my accounts, my travel schedules. All those little things I'd brushed off as casual interest from a loving wife suddenly snapped into place like razor-edged puzzle pieces. I wanted to be wrong. I needed to be wrong. So I did what any emotionally exhausted, emotionally starved husband would do. I confronted my wife. The wrong way. It was around 6 p.m. when she came home, coat draped over one arm, hair still damp from whatever spa she'd claimed to visit. I was sitting at the kitchen table. The phone was right in front of me, the flash drive beside it. I didn't even say hello. She stopped mid-step. What's this? I don't know, I said. Why don't you tell me? She didn't answer right away, just stared, and I saw something in her eyes. Not guilt, not panic. Something sharper. Calculation. She set her purse down, slowly, like someone trying not to startle a wild animal. Then she pulled out a chair and sat across from me. Her tone was calm. Too calm. Where did you find that drive? I didn't blink. In your lockbox. You know, the one with the letters from your dad. She exhaled softly, then tilted her head. Clint, you weren't supposed to see that. It was the way she said it. Not angrily. Not apologetically. Almost like she was telling a child that they peeked at their Christmas presents early. That's when I lost it. Who the hell are you? I snapped. Are you even really Tessa? Did you ever love me? Is this all just some experiment? Lower your voice, she said quickly, eyes darting to the window. You don't know what you're doing. No, apparently not, I said, pushing the burner phone toward her. Why don't you explain this? You're almost in the clear? Clear of what? For the first time, she looked nervous. But it wasn't fear of me. It was fear of exposure. She glanced at the door. I swear she was counting seconds in her head, waiting for something. Or someone. I need you to listen very carefully, she finally said. I can't tell you everything. Not yet. But if you want to stay safe, you need to stop digging. Forget what you saw. Let me handle it. I laughed. It came out cracked and hollow. You're seriously going with the for your own good speech? Do I look like an idiot to you? She leaned forward. Her next words chilled me. You were never the idiot, Clint. That's why they chose you. They chose you. Not her. Not us. Me. It felt like my blood turned to ice. I asked her what she meant. She didn't answer. Instead, she got up, walked over to the kitchen drawer, and pulled out the backup keys to the car. The old Volvo. She dropped them on the table next to the phone and the drive. If I'm not back in 24 hours, she whispered, drive west. Take Baxter. Don't use your cards. Don't contact anyone. Just go. I stood there frozen. She kissed me on the forehead, gently, like nothing had changed, and then she walked out the front door. That was the last time I saw her. At least, as Tessa. The door closed behind her with a soft click, but it might as well have been an explosion. I stood there in our kitchen, my kitchen, staring at the empty doorway where my wife had just vanished. No goodbye, no explanation, just a cryptic warning and a kiss I still felt burning on my forehead like a brand. 24 hours. That's what she gave me. I don't know if you've ever had someone say those words to you in real life. If I'm not back in 24 hours. But it doesn't feel like a movie. It doesn't feel dramatic or cool or mysterious. It feels like a clock being bolted into your chest, each tick louder than the last. I stood in a daze for what felt like hours, Baxter whining softly at my feet. He always knew when something wasn't right. Dogs just know. I finally picked him up and sat down on the couch with the car keys in one hand and the burner phone in the other, wondering if I'd just let the last 11 years of my life walk out the front door. I should have left. I should have packed a bag and driven west like she said. But the truth is, I couldn't. Not without understanding what the hell was going on. That night, I didn't sleep. Again, I just kept playing everything over in my mind. Every dinner, every touch, every time she cried during a movie or snuggled up next to me during thunderstorms. Was any of it real? Did she ever feel anything for me? Or was it all a calculated act? By 4:30 a.m., I made a decision. If I couldn't find her, I'd find them, whoever they were. And the only place to start was that burner phone. I went through every message. Most were short, vague, but one thread stood out. It was older, about 6 months back, and included a message from someone saved only as E. It read, "Your proximity to his system is key. Once you have full access, back it up and stay out. No direct interference. No emotional entanglement." And then her response, "Too late for that. Too late for that." Was that a slip? Did she mean me? Was the emotional entanglement me? I couldn't tell what hurt more, that she might have developed feelings for me despite using me, or that it changed absolutely nothing. I spent the next 2 hours on my laptop, researching everything I could. I started looking into private contractors, data firms, any connections between PR companies and intelligence leaks. I wasn't a genius, but I was methodical and stubborn. I went down rabbit holes that led to obscure articles, message boards, even a forum where someone mentioned a group called Gatepath. At first I thought it was just an urban legend, some half-baked conspiracy blog about shadow networks and corporate espionage. But then I found a buried article archived from 2 years ago. It mentioned a fire at a tech campus in northern Utah. One of the names involved? Tessa McCrae, my wife's maiden name. According to the article, she had been a contracted brand consultant who vanished before authorities could question her about missing security footage. The article suggested she was never charged, but there were unanswered questions. I almost vomited. My wife wasn't just a contractor. She'd been on the run before. I printed everything I found and spread the pages across the floor, like a lunatic detective piecing together a case he didn't want to solve. There were names, photos, references to internal leaks, and something called the Hudson Key. Whatever that was, it came up in at least 3 different threads linked to compromised networks and whistleblowers. And one name kept coming up over and over again, right alongside Gatepath and Hudson Key, Brendan Lang. I didn't recognize it at first, but then I remembered. That was the man she was sitting with at the gala, the man with his hand on her leg. I found a photo of him buried in an archived business magazine. Brendan Lang, former cybersecurity director for a Silicon Valley firm, now mysteriously consulting internationally. So this wasn't random. It wasn't about love, and it wasn't just betrayal. I'd been pulled into something massive, something global, and I didn't even know it. Just as the sun started creeping through the blinds, I heard a knock at the door. Not a polite one. A sharp, deliberate knock. 3 times. Then silence. I froze. Baxter growled. And I realized something terrifying. Tessa never took her car. She wanted me to drive away. But someone else was coming to make sure I didn't. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The knock was still echoing through the walls of my chest, deeper than sound, more like instinct waking up. I peeked through the side window, careful to stay in the shadows. There was a man on my porch, mid-40s, clean-shaven, wearing a dark gray windbreaker that looked too plain to be casual. He wasn't delivering food. He wasn't a neighbor. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, not looking at his phone, not knocking again. Just waiting, like he knew I'd be watching. I backed away from the window. Baxter was pacing now, nose low, tail stiff. That's when I remembered something I had completely overlooked. Our security cameras. Tessa had insisted we install them last year. In case someone ever breaks in, she'd said. I thought it was just overkill. But now, suddenly, I wondered, were they watching me too? I slipped into the hallway closet and yanked the DVR unit out of the wall. Disconnected it, shoved it into a duffel bag along with the flash drive, burner phone, and the pages I'd printed. I threw some clothes on top, grabbed dog food, a water bottle, my backup wallet, anything I could think of. My hands were clumsy, fast, like they weren't even mine anymore. And I waited. Eventually, the man left. But he didn't get in a car. He just walked down the street, slow, like he had all the time in the world. I didn't waste another second. 10 minutes later, I was on the highway heading west with Baxter in the passenger seat and my hands still trembling on the wheel. My stomach was twisting in knots. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I had to move. I had to disappear before someone made me disappear. About 2 hours into the drive, I stopped at a rundown gas station off a rural exit. Inside the bathroom, I locked the door and sat on the toilet lid with my laptop, replugged the flash drive. And this time I forced myself to watch more than the first video. The second file showed Tessa sitting at a glass table in what looked like a rented condo. She was talking directly to someone just off camera. Her words were clinical. He's opened the new system at work. The internal server has 2 vulnerabilities. If I can copy the drive access this week, we'll have what you need. Then she paused. And no, he doesn't know. He suspects, but he trusts me too much. That felt like a punch to the ribs. I actually let out a breath like I'd been hit. I kept watching. Video 5 was more alarming. She was visibly upset, eyes red, hands shaking as she held a glass of something. I told you I can't do this forever. He's not just some idiot with access, okay? He's my husband. She sniffed. I know that wasn't the plan. I know I'm not supposed to care. But he's a good man. He doesn't deserve what's coming. My heart twisted. It shouldn't have meant anything. But it did. Despite everything, part of her had meant it. Or wanted to. But whatever shred of hope that gave me died in video 9. It was her. And Brendan Lang. They were outside somewhere. A rooftop, maybe. City lights behind them. He leaned in close and said, "Once we get the Hudson key out of that system, he's gone. You understand that, right?" She nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't cry. Just nodded. And right then, the camera view turned. And for a split second, I saw someone else. A woman. Standing by the door. Holding something. It was blurry. But it looked like a child's backpack. Why would there be a kid involved? I closed the laptop and leaned forward until my head touched the bathroom wall. Cold tile. Bitter taste in my mouth. Then it hit me. Tessa was never supposed to fall for me. I was supposed to be a Mark, a safe, predictable guy with access to systems and no real reason to suspect anything. But she had fallen. Or tried to. And now it was collapsing around both of us. And Brendan Lang? He wasn't just some man she used. He was the one she'd reported to. Which meant he wasn't just part of this. He was in charge of it. And if that man was knocking on my door, I wasn't safe anywhere. That night, I pulled off into a cheap roadside motel. One of those places where the vending machine hums louder than the AC and the front desk clerk looks like he hasn't slept since 1998. I gave a fake name. Paid in cash. Slept with one eye open and Baxter curled up by the door like he understood everything. And the worst part? I wasn't even halfway to the truth yet. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, Brendan Lang, standing in my doorway again, not knocking this time, just walking in. Calm, quiet, patient. The man from the gala. The man with the smirk. The man who apparently had no problem sacrificing me like a pawn on a chessboard I didn't know I was part of. Baxter kept waking too, growling at every creak, every gust of wind against the motel window. I didn't have the heart to tell him I was just as scared. At 6:45 a.m., I gave up trying to sleep. I sat at the desk in the corner of the room and opened the laptop again. There were 3 videos I hadn't watched. 3 more pieces of the truth I had been running from. The next file opened with a distorted frame, and when it stabilized, I recognized the location immediately, my office. The conference room. Tessa was in there, alone. She was wearing her usual pretend I'm corporate outfit, muted blazer, pencil skirt, heels she hated but wore anyway, and she was placing a small object beneath the table. The camera zoomed slightly as she looked directly at it. "I'm placing the physical relay now. Access should begin in 5 minutes. He'll be in this room by 10:15 a.m. I'll distract as needed. And then she smiled. Not the smile she gave me when we shared coffee on Sunday mornings. Not the one from our anniversary dinner. This one was different. Empty. Planned. Rehearsed. I felt sick. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was sabotage. Corporate espionage. She wasn't just watching me, she was using me to steal something massive. And whatever the Hudson key was, it lived inside the company server I'd been managing for 5 years. Suddenly, I remembered something else. 2 months ago, a server went offline unexpectedly. I chalked it up to a misfire during a remote update. No big deal. But the logs were odd, like something had been cloned, not just accessed. Could that have been her? Was I the guy who made the digital door wide open and didn't even know? I clicked on the final video. It started in darkness. No voices. Then slowly the screen lit up, Tessa again, but different this time. She was sitting on the floor of what looked like a warehouse, her hair tied back, wearing a hoodie I recognized as mine. She looked tired, broken, alone. She spoke quietly. If you're watching this, Clint, then I'm either dead or I've disappeared. Either way, I owe you the truth. I leaned in. My whole body stiffened. I didn't choose you at first. They did. Because you were boring. Predictable. You had clearance without ego. A perfect in-between. I hated it at first. The lying, the reports. But then I started loving Sundays. And Baxter. And the way you hum when you concentrate. You made it harder than it was supposed to be. She wiped her face. I couldn't tell if it was tears or sweat. They're going to come for you, Clint. Because you saw too much. And because he can't risk you in doing what he did. She looked up. Lang's not just some handler. He was Gatepath. He built the systems that made all this possible. Now he's trying to erase it all, every file, every trail. You were part of the cleanup. I just couldn't finish the job. My mouth was dry. I couldn't look away. I left the real key inside your laptop bag. I know you never used the back pocket. Typical you. And then the screen cut to black. I dropped the laptop. My pulse was hammering. I grabbed the laptop bag from the duffel where I'd stuffed it days ago. Unzipped the rear compartment I hadn't touched in years. There it was. A single envelope. Inside, a white plastic card with a gold strip, unmarked, and a tiny handwritten note. You hold the real access now. Don't trust anyone. Especially Brendan. I didn't know what it unlocked yet, but I knew what it meant. Tessa hadn't just betrayed me. She defected. And that made her enemy number one to the very people she'd once worked for. Suddenly, the motel phone rang. The landline. I stared at it. It rang again. And again. No one knew I was here. No one had this number. I picked it up, slowly. Silence. Then, a voice I hadn't heard in days. I need you to listen carefully, Tessa said. I'm not dead. But if you don't leave right now, you will be. Click. I was already grabbing my things before the dial tone faded. Baxter barked once as if to say, finally, and leapt into the back seat of the car before I even opened the passenger door. I didn't think. I just drove. No GPS. No music. Just me, the hum of the engine, and a dozen shredded thoughts scraping the inside of my skull. Tessa was alive. That changed everything. She'd faked her disappearance, possibly faked her involvement, and still somehow had access to my location. Which meant two things. She was either trying to save me or finish what she started. But when you've seen someone cry on a warehouse floor for the life they almost had, you start believing in impossible things. I drove for hours through cornfields in silence. Somewhere past Des Moines, I stopped at a gas station, walked into the dimly lit bathroom, and opened my laptop one last time. The plastic card she'd left, the one with the gold strip, fit into a side port I had barely ever used. A prompt appeared. Hudson Protocol Override? Authenticate? I clicked yes. The screen flickered. Then loaded a folder labeled Lang Directive Archive. It was all there. Every plan. Every operation Lang had run over the last 6 years. Fake shell companies. Surveillance contracts. Covert blackmail schemes disguised as corporate audits. They weren't just targeting one company. They were running long-term manipulations on people inside finance, defense, and even digital infrastructure. People like me. And Tessa? Her name appeared as Asset T13. But right next to it, status, defected, compromised, eliminate with prejudice. I swallowed hard. She'd risked everything. For me. I copied the files to an encrypted drive and powered down. Then I used an anonymous upload to send the entire archive to an investigative journalist I'd met years earlier during a workplace training session. She once told me, half joking, if you ever uncover something crazy, don't call your boss. Call me. So I did. Then I ditched the laptop, changed phones, and drove until the gas tank ran dry. 2 days later, I was in a small town outside Jackson Hole, Wyoming, sipping gas station coffee and wondering what life would look like if I just stayed invisible. No systems. No passwords. Just trees, snow, and silence. That's when she walked into the diner. Tessa. Her hair was shorter, and she looked thinner, like she'd been living in shadows too long. But her eyes were the same. She sat down across from me without a word. Baxter whimpered and wagged his tail like he hadn't seen her in years. I didn't say anything. I just slid a copy of the drive across the table. Her eyes widened. You sent it out? I nodded. In the files. Safe, I said. Multiple copies. Hidden where people like Lang will never find them. She exhaled and looked down at her coffee like it held her entire past. I didn't know how to fix what I broke, she whispered. You didn't have to, I said. You just had to stop breaking it. We sat there in silence. A long, aching silence that didn't need words. Then, for the first time in what felt like forever, she reached across the table and took my hand. You don't have to forgive me, she said. I already did, I replied. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Not all betrayals end in fire. Some end in quiet forgiveness. In a diner in Wyoming. With cold coffee, warm hands, and the dog who never once doubted either of us. Tessa and I didn't go back to our old life. That version of us was gone. But we built something new, honest, slow, and raw. We moved to a small town, far from anything that needed passwords. I took a job fixing computers. She started painting. We kept to ourselves. And sometimes, when the wind picks up and the trees outside whisper like ghosts, I still think about that night, the one where the dress shimmered and everything unraveled. But now, when I remember it, I don't feel betrayal. I feel survival. And a strange kind of peace that only comes after the storm has passed.